Okay, so we talked about why we have moon phases in your last split video. Now we're going to talk about what those phases actually are. And I know you can usually see me, but I have the camera turned off today, so you'll just have to listen to my voice. I wanted you to be able to make sure you could see the full slide for all of them. So you know that we have phases of the moon, or we see different phases of the moon because of the position of where the moon is in relationship to the earth and the sun. So if you will set your notes up like this, these notes are going to be fairly straightforward. Basically, you're just going to have moon phases at the top and then phase names on the side. And when you do these notes, you will write all the phase names as we talk about them, and then you'll just draw a picture of what the phase looks like, so that way when you go back and review it, you can look at it. So real quick, the phase names, there's the new moon. That's the moon that you always start with. So I talked about when you see the sun. Okay, so if we have the sun here. Okay, so that's the sun. And then the earth is here. So that's the earth. Okay. Well, when the moon is right there between the sun and the earth, that's when you see a new moon. Because if you remember, this side of the moon is lit up and this side of the moon is dark. So from Earth, we're seeing a completely dark moon. Okay, so whenever we're going to put the moon phases in order, I always try to start with the new moon just because that gives you a starting place. And the moon revolves counterclockwise, which means that it goes this direction around the Earth. Okay? And the reason why it's called counterclockwise is because if you have a clock, it would look like this, right? 3, 4, okay, and you know what I'm saying. Okay, so a normal clock moves in this direction. Well, if you're going counter, which means opposite, then you're going to move in the opposite direction of what a clock would. So we have the new moon, the waxing crescent, the first quarter, or it looks like a half moon, half lit up, but you have a first quarter, you have a waxing gibbous, a full moon, a waning gibbous, the last quarter, and then a waning crescent. So if you will pause right now and on your notes just write these names and leave enough space to be able to draw a moon to see what it looks like. Go ahead and pause the video, and then once you get them written, you can start it up again. So this is what the moon phases look like. So we talked about the new moon. So here you have your new moon, your waxing crescent, your first quarter, your waxing gibbous, okay, full moon. And here's what I want you to notice. There's a pattern. Everything we're doing in this PBL talks about patterns. So as you see, do you see how the light gets bigger? Okay, and it's always during the waxing phase, it's always on the right side. All right, so the light grows and then it gets to a full moon. Well, once it's a full moon, it can't grow anymore. Okay, so then the light appears that it begins to shrink, because now the moon's moving into different positions and you're seeing different angles. So that is when the light is on the left-hand side. So you see that's on the left side, and that's called waning, and then it'll shrink. So your first quarter moon, remember, if you look, your first quarter and your last quarter, they look the same. They're both half moons, but the light's on different sides. So for the first quarter, the light's on the right, and the last quarter, the light's on the left. Okay, so I just wanted you to see them all in order so you can kind of see the pattern, how it goes from a dark moon and it grows a little bit over time. Remember that it takes 30 days for this to happen, so each moon phase is approximately 3 to 4 days. So we have our new moon. So next to your new moon, I want you to just draw, next to your new moon, I want you to draw a the black just a black circle colored in because you don't see any light during this time. Okay? After the new moon, you then have the waxing crescent. Okay? And waxing means that the bright side is increasing. It's getting bigger. And it's on the right side. Okay? So a waxing crescent is less than 1/2 of the moon. And this phase includes any visible moon from a small sliver to almost half. So even if you just have a little bit of light showing on the right side, it's still considered a waxing crescent. So the waxing crescent will get bigger over the 3 to 4 days, but it's still a waxing crescent as long as it's less than half of the moon lit up. So you'll need to draw that next to waxing crescent. And the crescent you can remember because it looks like, this one looks like a backwards C. The waning crescent actually looks like a C. Then you have your first quarter. Remember the light's on the right, and it's exactly half of the moon lit up. Okay, and so this phase only lasts one night. The new moon usually only lasts one night. Okay, because once it starts to grow a little bit and becomes more than half a moon, you've moved into the waning gibbous. So draw this one next to the first quarter and make sure that when you do this and you're drawing it, this happens a lot where you might get confused about what side's what. So if I'm going to draw this, and I'm going to split my moon in half, you're not going to color in the side that's light. You're going to color in the side that's dark because that represents the dark side. Okay, so you're going to color in the dark side, not the lit up side. The lit up side, no matter what color your paper is, it means that that's where the light is. Okay, then you have your waxing gibbous. Remember, the light is still on the right because it's waxing. And gibbous means that more than half of it's visible. So a lot of times you can, and this may be hard for me to do with the with this pen, but a way to remember gibbous, because remember crescent looks like a C. Well, you can draw a big G inside that gibbous. Okay, you can't do that with the crescent. So crescent looks like a C. Gibbous means that more than half of it's lit up, so you can draw the big G in there. Okay, and then you move to your full moon, and most of you are very familiar with your full moon. So when you draw your full moon, it's only going to be a circle. You're not going to color it in. You're not going to do anything. This represents full moon. Okay, even though it looks like it's blue in the background, I know that it's not colored in. It's lit up. Okay, then you have your waning gibbous. So what happens now is as the moon starts to move position. So for the full moon, it's actually in this position. You have the sun. You have the earth, and then you have your moon. Okay, so in space, because this side of the moon is facing the sun, it's lit up. This side's dark. Well, on Earth, we're looking at, okay, on Earth, you're looking at the lit up side, so that's the full moon. So then, as it moves counterclockwise, and the moon moves to this position, then when you're looking from Earth, the light appears to be on the left-hand side, but then it is shrinking. So that's called waning. Waning means shrinking. Waxing means growing. Okay? So make sure you have that moon drawn next to your waning gibbous. Then we have our last quarter, or still a half moon, but if you call it a half moon and you call your first quarter a half moon, it gets confusing. So then you have your last quarter. And the light is on the left. That's what's the difference between the first quarter and the last quarter. So light to the left, they both start with an L, so that'll help you remember that that's the last quarter. And then your waning crescent. So the light's on the left because it's waning. Light's on the left because it's waning, and it's a crescent. See how it looks like a C? Which means that it's less than half of the moon is lit up. And then the next phase that you'd move into is you would move back into your new moon phase. So let's just review real quick. Sunlight over here, which means this is the new moon, and you can see how, do you see how this is lit up? And then you follow this over here, and you're looking from Earth at the dark side. Okay? And then remember, I told you it moves counterclockwise, no matter where the sun is. Last time the sun was over here, so it looked a little, the moon moved this direction. Well, now the sun's over here. Wherever the sun is where the new moon is. Okay? So then if you follow this and we draw a line here, you can see that from Earth, you're actually, the light, if I put myself right here and you imagine that you're standing on Earth looking at the moon, the light's going to be on the right hand side, and less than half of it, you're only going to see less than half of it lit up, so that's a crescent. And then you move around and it's still your view from Earth. So that's why you see the different moon phases. But this is them in order, and it gives you the days. So day 0, which is why we always start with the new moon. 4 days later, you have your full waxing crescent. Day 7, you have your first quarter. Day 10, your waxing gibbous. And then day 14, your full moon. So it takes about 14 days to get from a new moon all the way to a full moon. And then another 14 days to get from a full moon all the way back to a new moon. Okay, so your notes, they should look like this. It was easier for me to just write the notes myself and take a picture of it. So I've been talking to you throughout about drawing the pictures of the moon. And remember, waxing crescent, see how my light's to the right? Make sure that you're coloring the correct side in. You want to color the dark part, not the light part. And then you get down here and just make some notes to yourself about what's what. So that way, if I covered this up and ask you, what moon phase is this? You're going to ask yourself 2 questions. Is the light to the left or is it to the right? And that tells you if it's waxing or waning. And then is it a crescent or a gibbous? And that tells you if it's more than half of it's lit up or less than half of it's lit up. And then it tells you if it's not one of those, then it's either a full moon, a new moon, or a first or last quarter. So you're going to want to be able to identify these moon phases. And you're going to mainly, above all, I want you to be able to recognize the pattern. See how the light on this side grows, and then it begins to shrink. Okay, and that's because of the position that the moon is in. So make sure your notes look like this, and then you will take a screenshot of them and turn them in, and then we'll also look at them in class.